Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to talk about something which I can't believe I haven't discussed yet. It's basically real life villainy that has destroyed our fictional heroes. And I figure since I want to cover real life villainy, might as well do it in real time. I'm just going to go over some really bizarre things I found on Twitter X over this last week. And trust me, they will not disappoint if you have not seen them. However, if you want some true traditional heroes, I have two links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels, 2 superhero graphic novels, 1 low fantasy. They focus on the traditional idea of being a hero, a paragon of virtue, the pathos, the suffering that needs to go into that character in order to get him there. The stories are about death, honor, virtue, those kinds of things. We have spectacular artists working on these books as well. You're looking at some of that art in the background. So if any of that sounds or looks appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and see if one of my graphic novels is for you. So back to my topic. As I said, I found all of these stories on Twitter, and I'm glad I actually did find them because I've been talking a lot lately about how we have turned a corner, how traditional merit-based storytelling has started to reemerge and is going to take over. But we got to realize that the people who have controlled storytelling for at the very least the last 15 to 20 years, these quote unquote progressive people, are still out there and still going full bore in the direction of we control everything and we are going to be the ones who tell any kinds of stories, especially quote unquote hero stories, and you must listen to us because you have no other option. And the thing is that I kind of forgot that for just a little bit, that these people are still going full bore. Why? Because Twitter, X, really became unwieldy in the way that it actually works, and I stopped interacting with it except for posting things. I never looked at my feed at all. Why? Because if you don't know this, Twitter is actually blocking most of what you're trying to post. Now, I can understand this to some extent. They're trying to make money, so I think it is more to drive you in the direction of paying them so that you can actually use their platform. But it's not just for people who don't pay, it's actually for people who do pay as well. Because I've talked to John's Longbox, friend of mine, he actually pays for a blue check mark. And yes, he has had some of this stuff happening to him as well. So far be it from this being a free speech platform right now. It is much freer than it used to be, but it definitely is not free. And I might as well describe it. I was going to do a whole video on it, but I'll just take a minute and a half here and tell you what's going on. So when you try to post something or even repost something or quote tweet something, 3 things are going to happen. One of 3 things are going to happen. 1, it actually gets reposted, or it gets posted if you're trying to do something new. That's the option that works the least. 2, you're going to get a separate message saying you need to do X in order to post, like put in your telephone number, etc., etc. I realize they're trying to stop AI bots through such methods, but that's what it is. Alternatively, under such warnings, you also get, you've already hit your limit of posting for the day, so we're not going to let you do that. All you got to do is keep on hitting post, 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 and it will eventually post. And thirdly, you're going to try to post or repost something, and it will say, your message has been sent, and then it will quickly delete that message without ever telling you, by the way. It used to say, your message has been posted, and then it would immediately delete the post, but it doesn't do that anymore. I think someone complained. Now it says your message has been sent. Now that doesn't mean posted. And you can recognize this if you see the number next to the likes or the comments and it doesn't go up. It used to go up 1 and then automatically go down 1 because it would automatically delete your post. Now it won't do anything. So if it doesn't move, you realize that your thing hasn't been posted. Now, I'm from an age of the internet where it just started and I was used to waiting 5 to 10 minutes for the pictures to load on a page. So I really don't care. I can hit post as many times as I want. Usually it takes about, 5, 6, maybe a dozen times for me to just cut and paste, post, 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 and it actually will come out. So I don't care, but I'm just letting you know. No way is it actually a free speech platform. And if anybody actually wants me to prove any of this, I'll post a short of it. Just let me know in the comments because I'm being 100% honest and truthful here about how things work. Anyway, my point was, I haven't been interacting with Twitter as much as I used to, trying to look for these crazy people and their crazy stories, just because what's the point? I can't repost anything anyways without taking time out of my day, so I'm just going to post my own stuff. But anyway, here's the first story. Some of these you may have run across yourself over the last week. This first story is a D&D post. It's a D&D post about how monsters aren't actually monsters. I'll read it because it's fairly short, and it is from, I do believe, an actual D&D rule book right now. It says, one of the most standard adventure hooks in fantasy games goes something like this. Goblins are attacking the village. The characters need to help. It's a straightforward setup. It's fun. But as written, it embraces the explicit idea that the goblins are attacking the village simply because that's what goblins do. So when that hook comes to mind or appears in a published adventure, put yourself in the frame of mind that attacking villages isn't what goblins do across the board. Then figure out what kind of goblins might engage in that sort of behavior. For example, goblin cultists are attacking the village, or goblin bandits are attacking the village, or goblin refugees are attacking the village, or goblin men's rights activists are attacking the village. And no, I'm not making that up. That's what it says. Someone highlighted it here. It wasn't me. It continues. Any of these alternative scenarios sets up the same basic adventure, but in these other scenarios, goblins aren't the noun. They aren't the agent of conflict simply because they exist to create conflict. Rather, they are the adjective, giving more context to who the agents of conflict are, letting you explore the story and why they've embraced conflict as a choice. Okay, so that's the end of that. This is actually, for me, this is comedy gold. I just laugh at this, and it would be so much more funny if you don't have to acknowledge at the end of the day that this person is actually being serious. So, just a few quick points as I'm going to move on fairly quickly. But number one, this person does not realize what monster actually means. It's derived from an old Latin saying or word, I do believe, which means to demonstrate. So what then are monsters? Well, monsters are a demonstration, an example of evil, of vice. That's what they are. They're meant to be a broad stroke example of what is wrong. That's the etymology of the word, and that's how it exists within our culture. I'm sorry, if you want to think of monsters as being something that automatically don't have to be bad, then you're talking about something completely else. And number two, you have to just look at this statement again. Goblins, men's rights activists are attacking the village. So they want to demonize men's rights activists. Why? Because this whole left-leaning, quote-unquote, progressive ideology is about accumulating more power for themselves by giving themselves, as they say, more rights, but not more rights, more privileges. They want excessive privileges for themselves and no one else. You see, if men want the same or equal rights as women, well, no, we can't have that. Never forget that. This is what it is about. It is about them accumulating more power by having excessive, what they call rights, which is really privileges. They never want to share. They never want equality. They never want equity, as they say. No, they want to dominate. And again, dominate in a way that they can be monstrous, where, oh no, I'm not really a monster. Anyways, moving on. Here we have in the background, I'm showing another page from a D&D rulebook. I do believe it's D&D. It might be another derivative of D&D, but it is definitely a published rulebook. And the heading is Romancing Monsters. Now, I'm not going to read any of this. If you want to stop and read it, you go right ahead. It's about the fact that instead of actually having a conflict with those monsters, why don't you have a romance with those monsters? Why don't you say, I'll defeat the villain by, well, basically sleeping with the villain, which is a monster. Well, I actually will read this one sentence. It says, romancing monsters and villains is a trope that exists in human-told tales for millennia. And I'm scratching my head going, huh? Okay, give me some example of that. Now, for villains, maybe. For monsters, no. Somebody actually posted a tweet as a response to this, which was perfect. It was, people, do not sleep with monsters. The majority of Greek mythology is set out to explain this exact point to us. But under the page heading of Romancing Monsters, after the introduction, they have a section on consent. And then after the section on consent, they have a section on consent. Why? Because they say here, no, mentioning it once is not enough. We have to have two sections on consent. And the real telling part of this entire thing is a short sentence that goes like this. But no matter how innocent it seems, don't ever confuse that moment of transition of violence into romance with a scenario in which romance is earned through violence, threats, or an imbalance of power. And here we have, once again, the entire crux of the argument of the quote-unquote progressive side. It's that they want power. And not only that, but they want power at the same time as being vicious. That is to say, engaging in vice, like sleeping with monsters. They don't want to see any sexual activity as monstrous in any way. You can be degrading as you want and yet still have the same amount of power as the person who does right. Sorry, doesn't work that way. Power actually comes from virtue. That's what virtue is. It is the power to accomplish your goals by working in accord with reality. But you see, they want to have those special privileges once again so it can rebalance the scales in their favor so that they can be vicious and do vicious things like sexual immorality of every ilk, but still have the same amount of power as someone who is virtuous. That's what this page screams. And by the way, this page just reeks of being written by someone who doesn't know how this game is played, nor who actually plays this game. I'm just saying, the majority of guys are guys who are going to play D&D type characters and games. And they're going to be fairly nerdy and shy guys. If you think one of them is going to devolve the storyline into him sleeping with one of the monsters, let's just say, would you want anyone from that table to actually stand up within the 10 minutes of that storyline has been described? I'm thinking no. Now, the next story is from CBR, Comic Book Review. Let's get back to the comic books for a minute, and I'll flash it up in the background for anyone who wants to read it. It is titled, "The MCU Just Created a Deadlier Killer Than the Punisher, and It Works." Here's how it starts. It says, "One of the things that fans adore most about the What If animated series is how subversive it can get. It could flip gender roles, as seen with Peggy Carter becoming Captain Carter, and Storm becoming a variant wielding Thor's Mjolnir. It could also turn heroes into villains and vice versa, as seen with Doctor Strange becoming Strange Supreme." Okay, first off, right off the bat, you see exactly what they're going for here. Subversion, once again, not to mention from a comic book guy. Number one, no one cares that Peggy Carter became Captain Carter. That was ridiculous. Number two, do you not know anything about comic book history? Storm actually wielded Mjolnir. That was part of one of the great story arcs of X-Men from Art Adams and Chris Claremont back in the 80s. Moron. Anyways, it continues. There are also characters who toe the line. They're not quite a villain, but they do stuff that feel like it's not something a hero would do. This is a theme in the What If 1872 ending. There, Kate Bishop's journey as Hawkeye comes full circle. It's a harrowing character arc that makes her a scarier yet sympathetic version of the Punisher. Okay, end of paragraph, but obviously this article caught my eye because they're talking about what heroes would do. And yes, this new version of the Punisher is Kate Bishop, but don't worry, they haven't Mary Sued her out enough yet. Just wait. In episode 6, What If 1872, Shang-Chi is Kate's partner. He's not into killing criminals in the Wild West, but he does beat them down and let Kate do what she wants to do. That's because most of them work for the Hood, the villain who kidnapped Shang-Chi's sister and who murdered Kate's family for their wealth. It nods heavily to many Marvel origin stories where heroes lose loved ones and contemplate going over the edge. The Punisher is the main example of what comes to mind. He lost his family in a gang war, forgot about what law enforcement is supposed to do, and spent decades killing. At one point, the Avengers tried to rein him in. Here, Kate doesn't have a handler or someone to control her. Shang-Chi trusts and respects her. Okay, this is where they subvert the entire thing. You see, they say the Punisher is the Punisher because he forgot about what law enforcement is supposed to do. No, he didn't forget about what law enforcement is supposed to do. He wanted law enforcement to work the way it's supposed to work. If he had his way, he would let the law enforcement do its thing because it would work correctly. It wasn't working correctly, and so he took matters into his own hands. No, I don't think it's the most heroic thing in the world, but it wasn't what they're claiming here. What they're claiming here is that the tragic backstory, the pathos of so many heroes and losing their loved ones justifies the fact that they can go out and murder people willy-nilly. Because that's what Kate does, and no one's there to stop her, so it's a good thing. Again, not justifying what Frank Castle Punisher does, but at the very least, he has a sense of justice. Again, he wants law to work as law is supposed to work. He believes law has some meaning. Its meaning has been lost, which is justice, and the best that he can do as one man is punish. That is completely different. Muddy, but completely different than, hey, I feel bad, I'm just going to go murder people now. One, Frank Castle, is a twisted, and I would say not very well thought out, but at the very least thought-provoking, dive into a rationalization of justice will out. The Kate Bishop here? No, this is an indulgence in the feelings of vengeance. That's it. And as I said, they're not done. They go on to say, strangely enough, it's brutal seeing Kate gunning down people with precision, quick timing, and no mercy. She is swift, merciless, and has no qualms about killing anyone. Her body count is by the dozens, affirming that in the 1800s, death was the way most outlaws were dealt with. Hawkeye wasn't into bounties, she was into revenge. Again, look, they're stating it right here. It's not about law. No, I'm sorry. Death was not how outlaws were dealt with in the 1800s. Death was the consequence of law and trying to maintain law, which proceeds from justice in a place where you had very few resources. But no, they're sweeping that under the rug and saying, no, she is a merciless killer. She'll kill anyone. And she's doing it out of revenge, and she's the hero. It goes on. While Shang-Chi fights the Hood, Kate meets the author of her pain. The arms dealer gloats about killing her kin while using a device to hypnotize her. When she breaks out, Kate grabs her guns and comes off like a mix of Quicksilver, the Winter Soldier, and Bullseye. In a matter of seconds, everyone collects headshots and dies. It's something Frank Castle would be proud of. Not even he could be so efficient with guns. I'm sorry, but this person writing this article deserves to be in a mental institution. But hey, we have that quick little nugget here. You have Kate Bishop, who, as far as I know, has no actual powers. So now she's the equivalent not only of the Punisher, but also of Quicksilver, the Winter Soldier, and Bullseye all at the same time. Yeah, Mary Sue'd out to the max because, girl boss power. And no, the Punisher is not proud of what he does. He would not be proud of the mass murder of people. As twisted as he is, as much as a delve into the darker side of humanity and how it connects to justice, the character is, he's not proud of the mass murder of people. But they're not done there. It goes on to say, Frank needs bombs to rack up the kind of numbers Kate accomplishes in What If. But while Frank would kill anyone who took his family away, Kate decides to hold back. Death would be too quick. She wants Sonny to suffer an agonizing, torturous jail stint. It's an inspirational lesson for all citizens, especially the young Kwai Jun Fan, who was Kate and Shang-Chi's sidekick. Luckily, they rescue her father from the Hood's clutches. Again, these people, the writers of this show, and I think the writer of this article itself, belong in a mental institution, doing backflips and twisting historic characters and history itself to justify the fact that she not only wants revenge, this woman, but her revenge can take any form. And no, a jail stint is not supposed to be torture. You want to go far back in history, sure. But even in the Wild West, jail was not supposed to be a place where you were tortured. Now, it might be a place where your conscience is supposed to torture you so that you have a moment of clarity where you can understand that you did something wrong and it was wrong. But no, what does this focus on? It focuses on the fact that, hey, guess what? Kate Bishop wants to torture this person. And yay, it is something that every citizen should celebrate. And then it goes on. Kate does get one final kill when she shoots down Shang-Chi's sister to save Shang-Chi. She had no idea that his sister was under the hood, however. As such, this isn't a murder done out of anger or vengeance. She was just saving her friend. Reconciling this with leaving Sonny alive, Kate has indeed found her humanity back in the final What If season. Kate needed to go cold and be a cruel machine in this dusty terrain to achieve her goal. Ultimately, however, Kate let the obsessive rage, grief, and trauma go. She could stop punishing the most important person in her life, herself. It's what her family would want, after all, for her to be at peace and hopeful about tomorrow with her friends at her side. And there you go. There you go. There you have their example of what a hero is. The ends justifies the means. That's it. So, she has this murderous rage and need for revenge, so she must get rid of it. It is justified in her getting rid of it. Killing anyone, torturing them, doesn't matter. She must get this off of her so that she can once again find her humanity. What kind of a message is that? What kind of a hero is that? This is not just perverse. Again, these people are either one, so mentally twisted they belong in an institution, or two, straight up evil, which would go back to the first stories that we talked about. Well, demonstrations of evil are not really evil. Monsters are not really monsters. Anybody can do whatever they want. And we have equal footing, equal privileges of being just with those virtuous people. Because why? Because we subvert everybody's power to allow us vicious people to have the same footing as virtuous, heroic people. And they can be just normal, everyday people, if you ask me. Okay, so let's move on to the final story on Twitter that I ran across this week. It was one of the stars of Wicked, the one who played the witch, whatever her name is. And according to MCU Film News, this woman now wants to play Storm in the MCU. Now, people were roasting her for this, and rightly so. But here's a picture in the background of this woman. And I commented the following. And yes, I know there's a spelling mistake here. I commented, am I the only one who thinks of the ancient wisdom of Paul when he sees a woman like this? Because she has a shaved head. And the ancient wisdom of Paul is, and I paraphrase, it is a shame and a dishonor for a woman to have her head shaved. And I think of this every time I see someone like, I don't know, Joy Reid, or this woman here, or the other women who have shaved their heads. They have quite literally chosen the shameful path, the dishonorable path. Quite literally, they place on themselves shame and dishonor. Why? Well, because they've been given natural gifts to use in a natural way to express their natural power through virtue. That's really what that whole passage is about from Paul. You don't mix the honorable with the dishonorable. But anyway, the point is, once again, these people don't care about heaping dishonor and shame upon themselves or about kicking against the goad of nature. Why? Because power is what it's all about. They rebalance the scales, so-called, as they see it, because they want special privileges and power. Power that they don't possess, power that they shouldn't possess, power that they subvert from others. And this is what I learned from Twitter this week. This is exactly it. All those 4 stories. You have these people. They are shameless, they are dishonorable, and they have brought that on themselves. And they don't care. Why? Because they amass power. They think themselves the equal of a virtuous person, the equal of an actual hero, by doing vicious things, by subverting justice into revenge, by indulging in their feelings so much that they will kill anyone who gets in their path, and are justified, supposedly, in doing so. Why? Because they're playing in the sloppy mess of their own so-called humanity. These are people who claim that they are heroes, yet are monstrous. Why and how? Because they say monsters aren't really monsters. I can do the most monstrous thing in the world. See, of course, the constant examples of sexual deviancy that they justify one after another, even in that D&D article, and say, doesn't matter what I do, I can do the most disgusting, monstrous things in the world, and yet I have the same power as you virtuous, normal person who does what's right, because I have subverted your power. Again, like that article said, it's all about subversion. It's all about power. They have subverted your power in order to justify, so-called, themselves, to put themselves on a pillar of privileges that they build up in order to be on the same footing as the normal, everyday, sane, good person. And they are the people in control of the mechanisms of power of most of our country right now, of certainly our educational institutions, of our entertainment, which I speak about all the time. Never forget that, and never stop taking it away from them. They do not deserve it. Do not pity them in any way. They have subverted justice in order to justify the monstrous. Take these things away from them and feel ultimately justified in doing so. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this, and don't forget, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels which center around the idea of a virtuous hero with beautiful art, merit-based construction. So if any of that sounds or looks appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and order yourself a copy of one of my graphic novels today. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later.